Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a sculpting video. I recently got a commission for a silverback gorilla, so I'll be going through the process of actually sculpting it. The process of the wrinkling will be over on my Patreon. It should be up right now, and that's for my $5 and up tiers. And the link will be in my description box, and I'll go through how I sculpted all of those wrinkles on top of the face. But in this video, I'm going to go through how I got the base or everything sculpted first. And then I'll also have a video of sculpting the hands and feet over on my Patreon after the coming weeks as well, and a whole lot of other videos regarding this particular doll and the process of making them. So if you're interested in that, you can head over there, and if you're interested in watching me sculpt it, then stay tuned. So I'm using some glass eyes. You saw me just painting them really quickly. So I originally painted them a plain black, and then I sort of scraped out a little section for the eyes because gorillas have black eyes and brown irises. So I wanted to capture that in the eyes itself, and it really made a difference. It really looked quite realistic when I sculpted it in the end. You might not be able to see it in the video, but they looked pretty good. I then using some what do you call it? The Sculpey Original, so it's the softer one, and I like using Sculpey Original. I like the consistency and the way the clay is actually a bit softer than Super Sculpey. I prefer to work with softer clays, but I have put a little layer of that clay over a foil armature inside it, and that way you can actually save on, well, there's a number of things that you need to use a foil armature for, and that is you use a lot less clay, which means it makes it a lot less heavy, and also another reason is that the clay can only sort of be baked in a certain thickness, so it means the clay will be baked all the way around, instead of if you had one solid clay piece, the bit in the middle, chances are that it will remain unbaked and soft. So yeah, the thinner it is, the better it bakes. So I sort of mapped out where I want all of the little details to go. So I'm just marking where I want the brows to be, where I want the eyes to be, the nose and the mouth, and that's after I've sort of quickly sculpted a really rough basic shape of the gorilla, and now I'm sort of just mapping out where I want the eyes to go. So I have these little Sculpey tools which are really useful, and I use them for all the little indentations of eyes that I use. I mean, they're good for other things, but I mainly use them for eyeball wells, if you want to call them that, because it fits in quite well when you're using glass eyes. It gives them a nice crevice to sit in, and they come in 3 different sizes if you get the pack. So I use the medium size for the eye wells of this one, because gorillas have a deep brow, so I wanted to make it a little bit of a bigger dint, I guess. So I've placed the little glass eyes inside of the eye wells, and I've just sat them there. Usually they sit there with no problems, but when you get bigger eyes, sometimes they don't. You just push them in a little bit further and they'll stick there. And I always have a reference photo up on my computer next to me on a couple of different angles, just so I can get all of the dimensions right, and that I have all the right views for the gorilla as well, because you want to look at it from different angles, so you can move your sculpture upside down, or you can turn it around, take a photo of it, and it will show you all of the downfalls or all of the bits that aren't looking right. So, and even if you're having a hard time, I'd recommend stepping away for even 10 minutes or something, and then coming back to it, and you can come back to it with a bit of a fresh mind instead of just looking at it constantly. So working on the nose, really roughly sculpting the nostrils, so they're definitely not refined at this point, so I'm just mapping out where I want everything to be, and then where I want any little crevices, or where I want to add some clay, or you know, any little details that I want to add. And you can sort of see it's starting to look like a gorilla, strange gorilla, but it's starting to take shape at the moment. and I tend to work on the whole thing. There's no right or wrong way of sculpting. It's really what works for you and what you prefer to do, and I prefer to sort of map out very roughly where I want things to go. So moving on to the eyes, I generally do my eyes all in the same sort of way. So I roll out a snake of clay, and then I use that as eye lids. And it's changed a little bit since I started. I tend to make them more of a lid now rather than like a little strip, I guess, is what I used to do before. So a little bit more refined as I've over the years, I guess. So I really wanted to get the expression of a sort of a nice gorilla face, I guess, like a resting, thinking gorilla face. So I sort of played around with the eyes after I've applied the little worms, just to get an expression that I was happy with. So I think maybe I played around with it for 10-15 minutes to try and achieve something, and trying to achieve some symmetry as well with the eyelids. But yeah, usually sometimes it can take me hours to find an expression that I like, and sometimes it's quick like this. So I achieved the expression that I liked pretty quickly. But if you're having trouble with I guess expressions, just do a quick test piece of some clay that you can reuse. I'd suggest using monster clay, and I mean I can do a video on that if that's something that you're interested in, on just playing around with different expressions and getting a little look-see of how things look when you play around with eyes and stuff. So I'm happy to do a video like that. So just let me know in the comments if you're interested in something like that. And I may make it as a free tutorial on my YouTube. Yeah, we'll see what happens. So working on the brow now, and gorillas have a pretty pronounced brow, so I wanted to achieve that look pretty well, because there's sort of a little difference between a gorilla and a chimp and an orangutan. Orangutans obviously look different, but I think it's very easy to make a gorilla look like a chimp. So yeah, I did a little bit of work on the brows to make sure it actually looked like a gorilla. And I did that by rolling a kind of a big fat worm and just building around the area around the cheekbone area, and sort of just sculpting the middle of the brow a little bit to just add a bit more extra detail. I also made this head slightly smaller, and that's to compensate for the faux fur that I'm going to be adding. So I usually make my head sculptures a tad smaller than what it usually looks like, just because I will be adding that faux fur. So if you sculpt it bigger than normal size, then you add the faux fur, it tends to look a bit disproportioned, and it might look like your head is too big. So yeah, I always tend to sculpt things a little bit smaller and then build it up with the faux fur that I add. So building the lips now, same deal. I like using worms. They're pretty good, but I wanted the mouth to be look more lip-like rather than something that has been sculpted out. So I like to do that by using worms, I guess, and it leaves a nice soft edge for lips. If you sculpt things out, it usually leaves a harsh edge, and then you have to spend a number of hours sort of refining that lip and making it softer, and removing clay and doing all sorts of things. So I like to use worms to achieve that nice little soft edge. And then I spent a number of hours sort of refining the way the face is structured and comparing it to all of my reference photos that I have. So I quite frequently put the sculpture up to the reference photo. I usually have it the size of the sculpture, so I've got all of the proportions right, and everything sticks out the right way. So that's a way of doing it. You could also print things off, or find an anatomy book or something like that has different sides of skulls, or anything you can get your hands on will work, but you'll find something that works for you. I just use things on Google because it's an image source, I guess. So adding a little bit more detail to the brow, I wanted to make a bit more dimension, so I added a little bit of clay and then refined it with my little rake tool. I do want to make some more rake tools because I don't have that many, and I've only got this little sort of little one, and I also have a bigger one as well, so I do want to make some more tools very soon, maybe. I guess if I sculpt some more masks, then I will look into making some more tools and probably make a video on it or something like that too. Moving on to the ears. So ears have always been a little difficult for me to sculpt. I'm not that great at sculpting humans. I find that really difficult because humans have a human has character and a specific look, where animals you can sort of get away with sculpting something that doesn't look exactly like your reference photo. So what I've done is just added a little shape, I guess, on the side of the head, making sure that where you're placing it is in proportion to the original, and just sculpting out little details with my ball tool, and then I sort of flatten it a bit with all the edges that have come up. It sort of leaves a bit more of a rough edge where you've sculpted with the ball, so I just go over it with my finger to pat it down and make it a bit softer, and then yes, after this I spend quite a few hours just sitting there smoothing everything out, adding the wrinkles and just making sure all of the proportions are good. For this particular one, because some of the actual Sculpey will be exposed, I had to make sure that everything was smooth and there was no defects in the parts that were going to be shown. So that goes for pretty much the whole face area and the ear area. So that's all going to be visible. So I spent that extra time refining the way everything looked, and to make sure I was happy with how it was turning out as well. So that's pretty much it. It's a really good discipline to learn when you're sculpting, to just take it easy and find the time to just sit and work on it and don't feel like you're in a rush, but this is what we have as a result. And then the whole process of making the doll will be on my YouTube for free, but there will be certain parts that will be available on my Patreon as well for my $5 and up tiers. So that's it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. My shop is at creaturesofnat.com, and you can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at creaturesofnat, and I will catch you in the next one.